Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner. This is episode number 196. I am very pleased and very happy to be able to welcome my special guest joining us tonight. He's a graphic designer and artist. He has done immeasurable amounts of work for the Star Trek universe, as well as his wife. I want to introduce Mr. Michael Okuda. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you for joining. And just to let everybody know, I'm very sorry that Denise won't be able to join us tonight, but we wish her well and hope to speak to her in the near future. But thank you for being here. And this is just really, really exciting because this is just a wonderful time in regards to everything Star Trek right now. So
There's an amazing amount of new Star Trek coming out. I don't know the number of new episodes coming out per year, but it's pretty close to what we were doing back in the day, I'm sure.
Yeah. So speaking of that, back in the day, I want to just kind of go back with you just to talk to you about how Star Trek started for you. How it was to watch in the 1960s, because I know you grew up with Star Trek, and then how your interest started from that, because I always find that to be really fascinating, no matter who I speak to in regards to that. And with your history with everything involving the show and the series and the Star Trek universe, what better way to ask the first question with that?
I grew up as a child of the space program. I grew up watching the Apollo astronauts walk on the moon and the Gemini astronauts walking in space and all that kind of stuff. And so the excitement of people going into space and seeing what they saw and seeing the Earth from the moon and all that kind of stuff, and watching Neil Armstrong taking that giant leap was amazing. And yet at the same time, because I was growing up when that happened, it was like, of course, this is how it's supposed to be. This is what a great nation does, and what a great society does. We go boldly into space. And Star Trek was the logical, at least it seemed to a small child, the logical extension of this is what it will lead to. This is what not just amazing technology, but going boldly and having that effort make us a better society.
Yeah.
So Star Trek was a logical extension of being a child when the space program was reaching for the moon, and it was therefore a part of shaping a lot of my interests.
I see. Now, thinking back, do you have a recollection of what your favorite episodes were at the time?
Whenever we're asked that, Denise always says Metamorphosis, and I always say something different.
And I know that's really not a fair question because there's so many. And I was just curious more from the perspective as a young adult. Well, actually, you were growing up in the 60s watching it. Mm-hmm. As a child of the 60s watching it. I was curious if your favorite episode maybe changed as you got older. Sometimes a lot of that happens.
I'll tell you that I remember watching Conscience of the King when it first came on, and it didn't do anything particular for me. Mm-hmm. And then Star Trek went off the air for some period of time in Honolulu, and then it got picked up in syndication. And then I don't know how they determined the syndication airing schedule, but Conscience of the King didn't air for quite some time after that. And then I saw it again and I went, wow, this is powerful stuff. This is about war crimes and about and it's very Shakespearean, not just because of the use of the play within the play. It's very emotional and very thought provoking. And just that couple of years that I hadn't seen it, I guess it must have been 3 or 4 years I hadn't seen it, made a big difference.
Sure. No, that's definitely understandable. Before we go on, I just want to welcome some of the folks that are joining us out there. I see that Lou is joining us, and he's joining us from Rhode Island. Welcome, Lou.
Hello, Lou.
And I see Don Bethman is out there. Don's joining us from Delaware.
He does.
And Jenny is joining us from Australia. Welcome, Jenny. Colin Curlis is out there joining us from the UK. Welcome, Colin. I see Christian is joining us from Canada. Welcome, Christian. May is also joining us. May, I forget where you're at, so please forgive me and please refresh my memory on that. And I also see Jack Daly is out there as well. Jack, welcome. And my grade school friend back from my kindergarten days all the way up to 5th grade is joining us, Lisa Polaro. Lisa, welcome. Good to see you out there. She's joining us from South Jersey. I see Carrie is joining us, and welcome, Carrie. Good to see you out there. Jeff Rubel is joining us from out west, from Utah. Welcome, Jeff. I also see Tracy Fuller is joining. Tracy saying, hi, Roy, Tracy, Henry, and our son, Ken, listening around the campfire in Lake Placid. Hi, Mike.
Nice.
Give our love to Denise.
I will do that. Thank you.
And Warren is joining us. Warren is joining us from Canada. Welcome, Warren. Dennis Chevalier is also joining us from Canada. Welcome, Dennis. And thank you, May. May is joining us from Edmonton, Alberta. And Lou is commenting, said he met you, Mike, in the Paramount Art Department back in 1987. And he's saying, I'm sure he remembered.
Oh. Hello again.
No, thanks everybody for being out there. It's welcome and great to have you out there. So Mike, in regards to that then, so Star Trek really left a very strong impression on you then. I mean, just, with that in the 60s and then right into the 1970s. And how would you say in regards to your career that when you were, going to school and everything and just things developing, how that impacted you?
Well, one of the most influential books in my life was 1968 book by Stephen Whitfield Poe, The Making of Star Trek. It was the first book of its kind. It was the first book to go behind the scenes of a television show and to describe it. And first of all, it was very cool because it told you a lot of secrets about how the show was made. Second of all, it had a lot of great pictures and drawings and plans, and it taught me a lot of things about film and television making that I didn't know. But for me, and for Denise, by the way, the most important thing it did was it said, Star Trek has this set of heroes that are these people whose adventures we see weekly. But behind the scenes, there's a whole nother set of heroes. There's Gene Roddenberry and Bob Justman and Matt Jeffries and Dorothy Fontana and Jerry Finnerman and John Dwyer and all these amazing people doing not superhuman, not PhD astronaut jobs, but jobs that ordinary people who work very hard can do. And it's like, and suddenly you realize Star Trek is made by people. And that was the first thing it said, maybe that's something that I might aspire to.
Yeah, that book was so impressionable, so powerful. And it's funny, you mentioned that. I remember, and I was just referencing my friend Lisa. I remember we used to have a bookmobile that used to come to our grade school, and they had and this was probably around 73, 74, I'm thinking. And I remember one of the books that I had purchased there was The Making of Star Trek by Stephen Whitfield. And and as at the time, probably in 74, I was about 8 years old. I'm 56, I'll be 57. And that, to get that book and to see the cool photos, the behind the scenes photos, as you were describing and everything. And the communicator has always been one of my favorite props in science fiction history. It's the communicator. And as you know, I'm a big Space 1999 fan, and the comm but to be actually able to see the innards of the communicator, because we were only treated to a handful of times in the original series where we actually got to see that. They really didn't. And I believe Gene Roddenberry, and let me know if you had heard this too, and correct me if I'm wrong, that he really didn't want to focus too much on like the phasers and the communicators. It was almost like if you were doing a Western, he would say you wouldn't like focus in on a gun, So it was every day, and it was the props were it was
Yeah,
the norm.
that was his general philosophy. He wanted it to have cool technology, but he didn't want you to go, look, here's a phaser. You just pick it up and use it.
Yeah. So anytime we were actually given those special close-ups or the opportunity to see to see it in, working, it was a rare opportunity, but it was definitely a special one. So having that in the book, it was, very, very, very cool. And also, if I remember correctly, they even had a layout of the sets in that book, so you got to see what, potentially what the soundstage looked like, or at least part of it, and the interviews and the memos.
You got to see the layout of the soundstage, and then if you watched the episodes with the uh, with that diagram, you begin to realize, oh, they shot this here, they shot this there, and when it all cut together, this relatively small set created the illusion, because of editing and because of the director's choice of angles, camera angles, created the impression that there was this huge starship, hundreds of people there. And in fact, it was a relatively small stage, one relatively short corridor, a handful of rooms, but with clever camera angles, clever sound effects, clever storytelling. In your mind's eye, you created this massive starship.
Yeah, it was incredible, and there was nothing quite like it ever
Mm-hmm.
up until that point. I just want to welcome a few other people that are joining us. Arthur is out there. Arthur, I believe, is joining us from Rhode Island. Welcome, Arthur. Lisa's commenting, saying that she loved the bookmobile back in the day. Jeffrey Morris is joining us. Jeffrey, welcome. He's saying, hi, guys. Great interview. Also fun to see Michael's collection behind him as well.
Hi, Jeffrey.
And Christian is saying, Roy, I found that book used about 20 years ago and read it almost as fast as a novel. Such a treat.
It was indeed.
So, and then my wife Sherry's out there too. She's saying, hi, Mike. Nice to see you, and thank you for being on the show.
Hi, Sherry.
So, in regards, so then really, then it was a huge inspiration for you as far as the direction that you really wanted to go. Then, right? In regards
Well,
to,
it was the book that said that it didn't immediately make me want to work on the show. I just, but it humanized the show. It humanized it. It put faces and human qualities on the people who did it. At first, I'm going, well, I could never be as clever and as ingenious and smart as those people. And then eventually, you realize they're doing what anybody can do, just if you're grimly determined.
right? So, how how did you become involved with Star Trek, Mike? How did what led up to that exactly?
Uh, my degree was in communications from the University of Hawaii. I actually, out of college, I got a job with an audiovisual rental company, which taught me not to care about equipment. Whatever it is, you can deal with it. And then I got a job as a graphic designer at a medical center.
Hmm.
And at the same time, I was moonlighting. I had a small company with a couple of friends of mine, Brian Fuhrer and Kurt Nelson. We did ultra low budget television, mechanical special effects for television commercials. So we would do things for local advertisers. I don't know if you have Crazy Shirts out there, but we did their first television commercial. We did First Wine Bank and a bunch of local commercials. And at the same time, I was also doing the occasional work for community theater.
Hmm.
So at the same time, I was part of a science fiction club and helped to do a newsletter. So I corresponded with Susan Sackett at Gene Roddenberry's office, and she invited basically anybody. If you're in Los Angeles, give me a call. So in '78, while Star Trek: The Motion Picture was in production, I was going from Honolulu to Arizona to attend Worldcon, And I wrote ahead and asked Susan if I could stop by in Los Angeles, and she said sure. So one day, she gave me the grand tour of the sets, and of course, I had never been on a Hollywood soundstage before, and of course, I had never seen any version of Star Trek, and this was not just Star Trek. This was Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which had a much larger budget, much more elaborate sets. And she's taking me around, and I'm duly impressed, as impressed as you think I would be.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
And we're on the bridge, and the bridge is not lit up. It's actually full of crap. It's they weren't shooting there, so there's lights and equipment and stuff. But this is the bridge, and somebody comes up to her and hands her a message and says, "Oh, just excuse me, just a sec. I gotta call the office." So she goes off. This is back in the days before cell phones, and she calls the office, and she says, "Do you mind waiting here for a moment?" So for a moment, I was alone on the bridge, and I'm going, "Holy crap! This is the Enterprise bridge." And for a moment, it was as fun as you think it is.
Yep.
And then a moment later, you go, "But I'm just visiting here. I want to be part of this." So I asked Susan when she came back, I said, "How do you get a job in Star Trek?" And which I'm sure she got 100 times a day. And her answer was, find something they need and figure out a way to do it better. That's good advice. That's pretty much good advice in any industry.
Sure.
So eventually, that led to me sending in some notes to the motion picture production office, suggesting, here is how I think you can use graphics to make control panels cheaper and cooler looking. And that led to Ralph Winter, executive producer of Star Trek 4, giving me a call and offering me a job.
Wow.
So they say you have to know someone in Hollywood to get a job, and honestly, yes, it helps if you do.
Sure.
But I'm the exception that proves you don't have to.
Yeah. You talk about a sliding door moment, a focal point in time, everything coming to be. Just that meeting. I mean, that's got to be something that, I mean, I can only imagine how you were feeling. First, just being, like you said, you're at the sets.
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek, the motion picture. I mean, there was so much going back and forth in that time period. I mean, Star Trek, went off the air in 1969. There's obviously, the animated series in between that. Then there was talk that phase 2 was going to potentially be happening, where Star Trek was going to be coming back on the air as a TV series. I know there was a lot of back and forth. And then the decision, obviously influenced by Star Wars, was that Star Trek, would become, like you said, Star Trek, the motion picture. And to have been a part of, growing up with it.
And there were several false starts and stops along the way. There was, Roddenberry's moving on to the lot. Oh, Roddenberry's no longer on the lot. Oh, they're talking to Harlan Ellison. Oh, they're talking to Ray Bradbury. Oh, they're going to produce in England. Oh, they're not going to produce it in England. They have a screenplay. No, they don't have a screenplay. So for a Star Trek fan, the time between 1969 and 1979 was an eternity, and it seemed like Star Trek would never ever come back because it felt like that carrot was dangled in front of us so many times. They were going to do it. No, they weren't going to do it. Mm-hmm. And when they finally did it, it was like, this was a miracle.
Yeah.
And whatever you think of the film, because there are certainly pluses and minuses. Mm-hmm. The fact that it was made in such grand style, it was, I think, the second or third most expensive motion picture ever made to that point. The fact that it got Robert Weiss and Douglas Trumbull and John Dykstra,
huge names, huge,
amazing, and Jerry Goldsmith.
Yeah,
and Harold Michelson. What an amazing achievement.
I'm just getting chills by you mentioning all those folks that were involved in the production.
And not just on behalf of Gene Roddenberry, for Star Trek's fans, mm-hmm. who were the ones who made it possible to happen. Fans all over the world, all over uh, pressured Paramount Pictures to have this done. They created this phenomenon, this unprecedented fan phenomenon called Star Trek, and Paramount said we have to figure out a way to capitalize on this. And it took them a decade to get their act together, but they finally did.
It's funny you're saying that about that being 10 years, and it's when I look back that 10 years. I mean, again, I was born in 66. I mean, my involvement, my watching Star Trek probably started around sometime around 72. If I remember correctly, 73. But that time period seems so, when you're younger, obviously, it just seems so much longer. And I think now, like what 10 years is, and it's like, 10 years is like nothing. But then,
well, to us now, 10 years, it's a long time, but it's but
crazy though.
Back then it was a lifetime.
Yeah.
Back then, if in 69 you said it's going to take 10 years to come back, I'd go, that's forever. Forget it.
Right. It's amazing, how, with each decade, how that changes. But yeah, I remember, and again, I Starlog magazine, I always give Starlog a plug on this show. Starlog was, always reading the updates and what was happening and with that. And when that movie finally came out, and I think if I remember correctly, it was either, I think it was December 6th or 7th of 1979. And when it came out, it was just, it was just waiting in the anticipation of what it was going to be.
December 7th.
Yeah. Tracy Fuller just commented. She said the Enterprise dry dock scene amazing. That scene to this day is probably my favorite. That 5 minutes of where Scotty, meets with Kirk and he takes him over in the shuttle pod just to see the Enterprise. And I mean, the Enterprise is a character in itself. I mean, she is a lady, and all that emotion and everything that William Shatner, just the way he sold it when he sees her, and the refit and everything. I mean, it was.
Yeah, that scene was worth the price of admission. I could have gone home. I could have gone home after that. Probably should have.
Yeah, it really does. Jeff Rubel was commenting about your comment earlier. He said, "Wow, even a minute or two on the bridge alone, I'd remember forever."
Yeah. Seriously, the bridge wasn't lit up. It was full of crap. It was dark. It was just me. So I'm going. I'm the captain of the Enterprise.
It's a personal moment, and it doesn't get any better than that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Warren just said, "Yeah, stepping out onto the bridge, I would have passed out." But
I know what you mean.
So, and the fact that you did what you did, and then like you were saying about with Star Trek 4, and to have been involved with the production from that. I mean, how was it being a part of that first movie? I have to ask for you.
I never thought of course I was completely thrilled to get that call from Ralph Winter, and like I sent the drawings and my resume in just because I figured if I didn't, I'd regret it. But I never actually expect them to get back to me, much less to bring me on. But they did. It was very much a dream come true. I do remember, however, there was this moment that I didn't expect. I had a phone conversation with Ralph, and he said, "Okay, we need to." He said, "Here's what we want from you. This is what we want you to do. First thing I need for you to do is, do you mind reading the script?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll do that." And this is, I think FedEx existed back then, but they used express mail to overnight. So they sent me the script, and I remember I had to go to the post office to pick it up because I had to sign for it. So I signed for it and picked it up. And I went in the parking lot. I sat in the car, and I tore the envelope open. And I remember thinking about it. Hey, as soon as I read this, I cannot watch Star Trek again. I mean, I was being hyperbolic about it, but
sure.
I realized that once you read the script, you can never watch the movie as an audience member. You can never go, "Holy crap, what's going to happen?
Right.
Are they going to get out of it?" because you will know in intimate detail what's happening, and all these things. And of course, I entirely understood that it is a sacrifice to consciously know you're not going to be able to watch the movie as a fan. But of
Right.
course, it is a sacrifice that I can't imagine that anybody watching this would have made a different decision.
Exactly. I think you'd probably get 100% on that if everybody would,
Oh, of course, I entirely understand, and obviously that's what I wanted too.
yeah. But that's an interesting point that you bring up, though, and I never really stopped to think about that. But really, it's almost like you have to turn off that part of yourself and redirect it into a different way of
Yeah,
thinking because
yeah,
it's a production.
yeah.
It's work.
People ask me, what is your favorite Star Trek?
Mhm.
And first of all, my favorite Star Trek is the original Star Trek, the one that I grew up with. And
Sure.
second of all the Star Treks that I worked on, I'm proud of it. There's a lot of things that I think are exceedingly cool. There are episodes that I enjoyed watching it, but they're not television shows to me that I watched as a fan.
Right.
I can't disengage sufficiently to just. And I could probably go back and rewatch Next Generation at this point. It's been enough years, but uh, I don't I don't think of Adventures of Picard and Riker and those things. I think of we finished this on time, or I wish I could have done that, or gee, didn't the effects department do a great job there, or you know what, or well, why didn't we do that?
You're probably critiquing it on a different level as opposed to, and you're remembering each scene that was involved and what have you, the specifics, as opposed to the story.
Yeah, and anybody who worked on it would it's your relationship with it is different, and certainly not complaining. It was the adventure of a lifetime, and it was wouldn't have traded it for anything.
Mm-hmm.
But it means that it's not impossible, but it's much more difficult to watch it as a Star Trek fan.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you, in regards to the movies, though, do you have and I won't say in regards to a favorite story, but in regards to the movies, do you have a favorite moment that stands out with your time working on the original series movies, or even with the next gen?
Well, certainly the moment, the scene where we unveil the Enterprise A bridge for the first time,
Mhm.
because that was the first time that I had worked with the entire original series cast. It was the first time I had worked on the Starship Enterprise. It was an all new Enterprise, and I had done I had done all of the control panels on that set.
Right.
So it was very much my set, and I it was a top secret scene. The stage was closed, but I was allowed to be there. I had absolutely nothing useful to do on that day. I just sat there and kind of gawked, and oh, there's Leonard, and there's Bill, and trying not to bounce up and down too much.
Sure. No, and
But
that's where you could actually still have like those fan moments. I would imagine.
yeah, I mean,
But
I did go up to Jimmy Doohan, and we chatted a little bit, and it was March 17th. So he asked me, "Oh, it's St. Patrick's Day. Did you make it all green for St. Patrick's Day?" And I should have said yes, but I didn't.
no, that's a nice moment though. Hey, I want to welcome. I see Mary Beth is out there. Mary Beth is watching us on YouTube. Mary Beth, welcome.
Hey,
Mary Beth
Mary
is
Beth.
joining us from Massachusetts,
See, see you soon.
and also James Michael Avalos is out there, and I believe James is joining us from Australia as well too. So, thanks for being out there, both of you, and hoping to see you soon too, Mary Beth. I'm going to try to see if I can get up there in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to try to see what I can do in regards to it, especially with Mike and Denise, and especially William. When William Shatner being there, that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, and don't forget Dave Blass and Liz Klaskowski.
Yes, yes. In fact, I'm going to jump ahead on that. This is the perfect time to do it. I usually do this during the shout outs, but I'm going to just put this out here. Folks, July 7th, 8th, and 9th, Star Trek Original Series Set Tour is going to be having William Shatner, Captain James T. Kirk. He's going to be at the set tour. Those dates, it's 2 weeks from now. And then, of course, Michael and Denise Okuda are going to be there. And as Mike was just saying, Dave Blass, and I try not to butcher Liz's last name, Liz
Kolakowski.
Okay.
Dave is production designer. He was responsible for basically the look of the show, everything except the actors. So all the sets, all the ships, and he's amazing. And he's the guy. He is a Star Trek fan from way back. So whereas there's a tremendous temptation to say, okay, everything that was done before was great, but I want to put my own stamp on it. Dave approached it from the point of view of Star Trek is a historical. It's a historical piece, and you have an obligation to be true to what came before. So he worked very, very hard. Liz was one of our art directors, and it was her job to shepherd the project of the Enterprise D bridge. And on one hand, yeah, we had some blueprints. Fortunately, Doug Drexler had saved a set of blueprints. The problem is that between the time that they're drawn and built, there's 1,000 little changes that are made. The production designer will say, change that. No, make that a little longer. Make that a little. So and those things are almost never documented back. So it was Liz's job to reverse engineer by looking at film, by looking at stills, by taking the best guesses she could, and she and Kevin Cross and Kyle Cotier were the set designers that drew the working blueprints from which the amazing construction department built that damn thing. And it's a really complicated set. There's all these compound curves and fiberglass skins. You look at the tactical array as it's this intersecting compound ellipses, and I don't even know how to draw the thing, much less build it.
It is such an amazing piece of work, and the fact that it was recreated for season 3 of Picard. I mean, jumping ahead, what a moment. I mean, just having watched Star Trek: The Next Generation, I have to say, for me personally, I mean, the original series is probably my favorite as well, always has been, but watching the next show that I watched from beginning to end was Star Trek: The Next Generation. I remember watching it. I think here it started in September of '87 and it went until May of '94.
Something like that.
Yeah. And that was the only series really out of all the incarnations that I watched from beginning to end. And I have a lot of friends that'll bust my chops because, they'll say, about, being Star Trek fans, and they'll say, Roy, you're a big Star Trek fan, but you didn't watch all the other shows. And I haven't. I've watched different episodes, different seasons, but I've never watched them all the way through like I did the original, especially the original series. But then Next Gen is right there, almost behind it. But
my heart is with the original Star Trek, and as I said, I'm very proud of what we did on Next Generation.
Yeah.
But still, I kind of approached it as an intellectual exercise. I knew what we wanted to do. I knew what Liz and Dave wanted to do, and I tried to honor their goals, and try to remember what I had done back then. But I have to tell you that this was in the midst of COVID, so we really had very few opportunities to be on the set. So there was a day where Doug and Denise and I and several other people we came up to the Santa Clarita Studios, and we went in, and Dave and Liz wanted to show us around. It was sort of like the final inspection before they shot it. And Terry Metalis came by, and Jonathan Frakes was shooting on the next downstage. He came over to say hi. So it was very fun. But I I knew it was going to be fun seeing our coworkers. Jeff Mandel, the series graphic lead designer, was there. Uh, Todd Marks, Ben Betts, video playback engineers. I knew it was going to be fun, but I was unprepared for this overwhelming sense of nostalgia. Oh yeah, I spent 7 years here. I helped build this damn thing, and it was and it was very much home. And a few weeks later, uh, we shot an episode of the Ready Room with Will Wheaton. So I got to walk through that set with Will, and I got to see him. The same wave of nostalgia hit him, and it probably hit him more than me because uh, he spent probably quite a few more hours just literally sitting on that bridge than I did.
Right. In fact, your mention of that too, Mike. And I'm going to put a link of this into the comment section for the folks to check it out. But it's available on YouTube. And what you're describing, there was I guess he did it on the Ready Room and he showcased it where he actually tours seeing the bridge of the Next Generation for the very first time and being able to go through it, and he's actually walking with you, and it's like a 180-degree type of
Yeah, they released two versions. One was the shorter version was in the Ready Room, and the longer version is like 30 or 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Is on YouTube, and
I just put the link into that for the one that's on YouTube, and that's if I would highly encourage everybody to check it out. And it's Will Wheaton is very emotional about just coming on there for the first time, and he talks about how he knew everybody was back together from his from the Star Trek family and had that opportunity to be on there, and the fact that he gets to go through everything with you and everything, and just have the experience and then go to his station, and it's pretty amazing. And it's a lot of nostalgia, and the fact that it's 35 years ago too, Mike, that blows my mind.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
We shot on that set for the better part of a day. So we shot, and then we broke for lunch, and the catering was over on the next in the alley outside of the soundstage. And after lunch, I finished lunch a little early, so I went back, but Will had finished lunch earlier than me, and he went back, and I went in, and he and I were the only people on stage. I peeked into the bridge, and I saw Will at his station taking a selfie in his at his console. So it was very meaningful for him as well.
No, that's very, very special. Mary Beth commented, she just said, see you all soon for our big event. And Tracy said that she's going to be up there with Henry. Yeah, Tracy, please give Henry our best too. And she's going to be up there on Saturday.
Yeah, Mary Beth helps run the William Shatner event at the Star Trek Original Series Set Tour, which again, if you get a chance, please join us. Shatner is amazing there. I've never seen him as open and as friendly. If you get a chance to do one of those tours with him through the set, he's funny, he's interesting, he's interested. He also does a thing where he spends I don't know, like about an hour with a group of fans, just on the bridge and just chatting about whatever people want to talk about, and it's really interesting to get a sense of the man. William Shatner gets a bad reputation. He is interesting and he is interested. So he's curious about the world. So it's fascinating to see him learning and sharing what he has learned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can't even believe that he's 92, and everything that he's done and continues to do is it's pretty amazing. And it's a very intimate time for fans to be there, whether they're as you were describing, being on the set on the bridge with him, or even going through the tour with him.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or
that's, I mean,
even he also gives a presentation. I'm not exactly sure what they're doing this year, because I know it varies, but he usually gives a presentation, an auditorium presentation,
yeah.
and again he's always interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, if you are interested, you can go to the website. It is www.startrektour.com. And again, the dates are July 7th, 8th, and 9th. It's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah.
It's literally less than 2 weeks away from now.
Yeah, Denise and I are we guiding a couple of tours, and I know we're giving a presentation with Dave Blass and Liz Kloskowski. We'll be talking about the making of Star Trek Picard season 3, and it's actually a very good time to do a presentation. And the reason is that this is what they call Emmy season. It's when the Television Academy nominates and votes for the various Emmy awards. So Dave has put together all these behind the scenes photographs and things for presentation to the Academy. So he just happens to have basically a large mass of photos and drawings to show here's what they did. Here's what we did.
No, and to be able to see that, that's pretty cool. And I really hope Star Trek Picard gets that Emmy. I mean, that would be wonderful.
Well, I hope they get an Emmy too, and I would be upset if they didn't. However, it is a cliche, but it is absolutely true that getting to do the work is the greatest honor.
Yeah.
And they got to do the work. I'm incredibly lucky to have been able to contribute to it. But they are the kinds of people you want designing Star Trek. They love it. They sweated it. They went the extra mile, and every single mile. And there's so many different miles that to be done. And they did an amazing job. And I take my hat off to them.
And to you too, Mike, and Denise as well. Thank you for everything that you've done, the both of you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Brendan commented, he said, William, meaning William Shatner, he's a living legend.
He is indeed.
He really, really is. I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. I want to talk to you about something that when I heard about this release, I was so excited. This was several years. It's crazy. This was it came out almost 7 years ago, but it was amazing. And if you are a classic Star Trek fan, I'm just putting this out there. This is something, if you do not have it, I urge you to get it, because it is incredible. And it is the Roddenberry Vault. And I was just wondering if you could just talk about that a little bit. I mean, it's an amazing project.
Yeah. The Roddenberry Vault came out in 2016, but about 10 years before that, literally 10 years before that, around 2005 or 6-ish, we got a call from Rod Roddenberry, Gene's son, saying that his mother and father had kept hundreds of reels of film from the original series. Would we like to come over and take a look? Yeah. And there were literally 800 cans of film, some of them with a lot of film, some of just little snippets and trims that were literally the rejects from the cutting room floor for quite a few episodes of the original series. And no one had ever gone through it. And but Rod made a deal with CBS, and they brought on an old school film editor to take those reels of film and sync them up with audio, which was this huge task. You had to do this manually. You had to figure out which soundtrack went with which thing. And so for a period of years, almost literally 10 years, every once in a while CBS would send us a DVD. It was just raw footage, just stuff from the cutting room floor. And a lot of it was it's almost exactly what was on the air. But sometimes it's a different angle.
Mhm.
Occasionally, it was a moment you didn't see a line that was cut. But then you'd see little moments of, this is what Bill Shatner looked like before they said action, or
Mhm.
this is what Leonard Nimoy did after they said cut. Just a few moments, but it was like you're there.
Mhm.
And we spent literally 10 years cataloging these things, not 10 years full time, but
Sure.
off and on. And then in 2015, um, Ken Ross, who was at the time senior VP of CBS Home Entertainment, wanted to do something very special for Star Trek's 50th anniversary. So he brought on David Grant and Ryan Adams, and brought in filmmaker Roger Lay Jr. and said, let's find a way to present these at least some of this footage in a way that we can get it out to people. So the problem is that there's a lot of stuff that if you know the stuff intimately, like, oh my God, that's a different angle, or
Yeah.
oh, well, in the actual episode he looked this way, but now he's looking that way. So, and if you're and so Denise and I would just geek out endlessly over these things. But honestly, after the 17th, oh, that's a different take. He said it differently. It's you need something to give it context so you understand what you're looking to. So Roger created this series of short documentary films, in which we could use this footage and present it. And we presented this along with what they decided to do was put together a package of 12 episodes, and then with each episode there'd be footage that came from it, packaged together in a little documentary. So you could see the episode, and you could see the context where it came from, and then you could see something, and then you would see something important about it. And there was this amazing there were some scenes, just a few lines, not big scenes, but there are some scenes from some lines from City on the Edge of Forever. That great moment where Kirk and Edith Keeler are going up the stairs, and she trips, and you realize, oh, she could have died. That could have been, he might have changed, in saving her, he might have changed history. But so she goes up into her apartment to get I guess to get a new pair of shoes, and he says, and she says, "Will you wait for me?" And he says, "Forever." And it
Mhm.
was just this amazing. It was the theme of the episode.
Yep.
And uh, we also interviewed a lot of people who were involved in the original series, and we asked Dorothy Fontana, why did they cut that?
Mhm.
And she just said, it's just time. You had to fit a time slot.
Right.
So,
That,
and then we found a whole bunch of footage of the Enterprise model. We found a series of tests of those little spinny lights in the engines. They tried several different looks for it. We found the camera tests for that. We found pretty good quality negatives of or footage of the shuttlecraft. The first time we see the shuttlecraft in Star Trek was not the Galileo 7. It was in Menagerie.
mm.
And if you look carefully in the Menagerie, it's hard to tell in the actual episode because the shuttle is small, and the optical effects are fuzzy. But if you look carefully, the shuttle has entirely different markings. So we have a clear shot of that, and you can see what those markings are.
Oh wow, that
So
had to be really cool to see then for the first time like that.
yeah, it was, and then once you understand what it is, and you go back and you can say, yes, oh, that's what I'm seeing.
Right.
Yes. Am I frozen?
No, I can see you. Can you?
Okay.
You're good.
Uh, okay. My screen went blank, but as long
Oh, nope, you froze, but I can hear you though.
okay, well, that's a start.
You're still frozen, but I can see you. Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you fine.
Okay, it cleared. You're good.
Okay. Well, you're
Uh-oh. Did I freeze? Mike? Mike? Can you hear me, Mike? Mike? Oh, I hope I didn't lose you. Can everybody hear me out there? I'm going to try to... Well,
frozen here,
Mike?
but that's okay.
Okay,
I
I
know.
can
I
hear
know.
you.
Added that is that once, if you get a chance, I think well. Another thing we found was in the episode Charlie X, Nichelle Nichols sings a song. No, it wasn't Charlie X. It was Conscience of the King. Excuse me. Uh, and Nichelle Nichols sings a song, Beyond Antares. We found footage of the entire song, including a verse that didn't make it to air. Can you still hear me?
Now I can. Yep,
Okay.
I can.
Anyway, yeah, it's buffering terribly, so I can see that you're there.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. So you there was an entire song that was in the Conscience of the King that she sang then?
Yeah. Well, I think the song has three verses, two of which are in the episode, but in the actual episode, we only see her at the beginning of the song and the end of the song. And the entire middle is some mysterious figure trying to kill Kevin Riley.
Mm-hmm.
We have the coverage of her singing the entire song, and plus there's an entire verse that was cut from the episode. So I I thought that was really cool.
That is cool. I remember there was an alternate angle or an alternate take with William Wyndham from the Doomsday Machine that's in the release. Also, in Return to Tomorrow, when the famous speech when Kirk is speaking to everyone in the briefing room, there's an alternate, I guess,
There's a
angle or
there's a different angle, and there's a couple of lines at the beginning that didn't make it into the final episode.
yeah, that was very interesting. Just, I mean, it, like you said, when you see this and having seen these episodes, like so many of us have, seen it over, like I'll even be safe to say 100 times over. It's almost ingrained in you. So when you do see like a different angle or if somebody's looking a different way, you do pick up on it, and it's like, wow, that is so cool. And I can only imagine how you and Denise were feeling, though, seeing a lot of maybe the stuff that we didn't actually get to see because, it wouldn't have been feasible to present it in the into the Blu-ray release, but still that
We put most of the good stuff in there. There was 800 reels of stuff, but a lot of it was like, okay, yeah.
gotcha. Yeah.
But
So
the stuff that is cool is like, to someone who knows the show, like we do, like you do, like frankly, a lot of fans know. It's just amazing.
yeah,
There's
it's
there's a what was it in Conscience of the King? There's this uh, scene with on the hangar bay observation deck where where Kirk and Lenore Caridian,
mhm.
they're ostensibly trying to seduce each other, but of course each is trying to use the other. So it's both romantic and creepy at the same time.
Mhm.
And there's several additional lines that didn't make it into the final, which you go and it makes it more romantic and more creepy.
And it goes like you said when you talk to Dorothy Fontana about that, and it goes back to time. It's such a shame, but I guess that's again, that's the art of having to get it into production on the show. But it would have been amazing if these special moments, especially in the city at the edge of forever, I mean, that so added to the story as you were
Well,
describing about that one scene.
yeah, I very much regret that line didn't make it in, but I have to tell you that in general, in television and film production, usually shorter means you're boiling it down to its purest essence so that this might have been a wonderful moment, but by compressing it and you're purifying it, and you're usually making it stronger. Making it longer, I like seeing additional footage. I don't necessarily want to see it put back into the movie.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when you put it back, you make it weaker, even though that moment might be wonderful.
Yeah, that's well said. And actually, too, if I remember correctly, Kirk and Edith Keeler, they don't. He goes to kiss her in the episode that the what's presented, but really you don't get to see them kissing, and if I remember right. So
I
they
honestly
actually have
don't
like
remember.
that passionate kiss after, when that's part of that scene that was cut too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but it's and then the Devil in the Dark, there was a lot of additional footage with that as well too, in regards to everything. So if you have not, folks, if you have not acquired this, definitely get it. You will be amazed, especially if you're a Star Trek fan, an original series fan.
Yeah, Roger. We worked with Roger to interview. We talked to John D.F. Black, who was story editor first season. Probably one of the last interviews that he gave before his passing. We talked to Fontana. We talked to Ralph Sininsky, who was the director of Metamorphosis and a bunch of episodes. We talked to Michael Forrest and Leslie Parrish from Who Mourns for Adonais. We talked to Gary Locken. I'm not quite sure why, because we didn't use this episode, but he was a hoot. He was. I think the reason we were really interested in him wasn't so much for We're No Man, but because he had been in The Lieutenant, which was the series, Roddenberry series before Star Trek.
Right.
We talked to Bijo and John Trimble, and some people who really didn't have anything to do with it, but we thought they had interesting to say. We talked to Bill Prady, who's co-creator of The Big Bang Theory, and then we from the Star Trek movies we talked to Ralph Winter, Kirk Thatcher.
No, it was
we spent weeks interviewing people.
It was very well represented. It was pretty neat too to see a lot of the folks, like you mentioned, Leslie Parrish. I've not seen her in anything for years, and I'm sure at this point she's of course she's probably retired and everything. But it was good to see her being interviewed and to see her talk about it, about doing that. And you mentioned Ralph Sinensky. I mean, he was actually had him on the show maybe about 2 years ago, and what an incredible memory. I mean, the amount of detail he has retained is incredible.
Oh yeah, I remember once we said, "Do you remember a scene where something happened?" And he said, "Oh yeah, we shot that on a Friday afternoon. Man, we were trying to get that in." We also talked to Eleanor Donahue, who played Commissioner Hedford in that episode, and it was she lives in Palm Springs. We actually drove down there to interview her, and she was amazing. She said she hadn't seen the episode since then, so she watched it the night before, so she would know what we're talking about. But the thing I remember most is we arrived at our apartment, knocked on the door, and she opened the door, and she just smiled and said hello, and suddenly it's Commissioner Hedford. You don't usually get that with an actor, but she had that welcoming warmth that she portrayed when Hedford merged with the companion.
Right.
That's that same magic coming back.
That's pretty awesome to hear, actually. No, and she's done a lot of stuff. So many of those performers. I mean, their repertoire. I mean, of performances throughout, the 1960s and the 70s, and even into the 80s is incredible. And it's, for me personally, it's always great to see actors in, that were part of Star Trek in different roles, and just to see their range and everything. But it always comes back to Star Trek, though.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really nice to hear that you felt that when you had the opportunity to meet her in person, though. That's great.
Well, we talked to Michael Forrest, who's really nice guy, but he's utterly mystified why people still want to talk to him about those old shows.
Yeah, and he's definitely done his share of episodic television too.
Mm-hmm. And Barbara Luna, who's such a sweetheart, so wacky.
Yeah, I actually had the opportunity to just see her recently at a convention in New York, just probably about a month and a half ago, and again she not only Star Trek but the Outer Limits, and we were discussing about the episode that she was in regards to the Outer Limits. In fact, Michael Forrest was in the same episode too with her. But very cool. Another thing I want to talk to you, Mike, about too is just in regards to contributions, and this is just just a couple that I'm putting up here, but especially the Star Trek technical manual, and I know you did that with Rick Sternbach, but then the Star Trek chronology, and also the Star Trek encyclopedia, that you did with Denise, and the level of detail in regards to these books. I mean, wow, incredible.
Well, one of the things we were very fond of saying is that anybody could have done those books, because even though we worked on the shows, we tried to approach it as a research project. We didn't say, "Oh, I know this, so you just write that down." We watched the episodes and pulled data points from it, and then wrote little statements, just say, we knew that this happened on this date. Why did we know that? Because Kirk said this, and you quote what he said, so that well, did he say I had a brother? Did it exclude having another brother? Did he is a brother still alive? Those kinds of things.
Sure.
And in fact, when it came to Next Generation, the fact that I had worked on it because at that point, when we first started that, Denise was not yet working on staff, I don't think. It was kind of counterproductive, because I would say, okay, well, remember Picard said this, and Denise would go, no, he didn't. And I'm thinking of an earlier revision of the script, which didn't make it to the aired episode. So even though I knew stuff, it was like, yeah, he did, but he said that in the blue pages, but in the yellow pages it changed to that.
Right.
So we had to go, and we had to we not only had the scripts, but we literally went and corrected the scripts to what was said on the air.
Gotcha.
As a result, it's something that literally anyone could do it. All you had to do is watch the things and take absurd amounts of notes. It was, and you're trying not to assume anything.
Right. But it's being very detailed, and it's a labor of love too. It's a passion, and it was a project. And I understand what you're saying, that anyone could have done that, but it's the passion was behind you in doing something like that, though, too.
Well, we love Star Trek as much as much as anyone, and we wanted the reason we thought the chronology was important was after at this point, Deep Space Nine was starting to go into production, and there were an unprecedented number of novels and comic books and other things that were coming about, and it was increasingly difficult for novelists and other writers, particularly ones who weren't involved with the show, to stay consistent. Everybody knew who Kirk was and who Picard was, but when did the Federation start? What was the Romulan this? Or and unless you go back and watch that episode, you're not going to know, and you're probably not going to know what episode to check out.
Right.
So there was a need for a standardized timeline that 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 both writers and the studio could refer to,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise, you read a novel and you turn it in, and someone says, "Well, no, that's not when Kevin Riley got married."
Right.
And you say, well, yeah, but he did in this. Yeah, but that doesn't matter because he did it in that.
Right.
And there was supposedly, and I wasn't there, a meeting with licensing people, with supposedly with Gene Roddenberry, where someone finally said, we need a standardized timeline, but who are we going to get to do it? And we're told, and I choose to believe it, that Gene volunteered us to do it. So we felt like we had a mandate.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of things that we came up with dates for that, we tried as much as possible not to have an agenda. We didn't particularly care if we pushed this theory or that theory, or followed this novel or that. We took what was on the air as much as possible as absolute.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, we tried to look for the path that made the most sense, that licensing might not have a problem with, Gene's office might not have a problem with, that our producers are not likely to get upset about. That is a compromise that people could live with. And the upside of that is, if you have that, then future Star Trek projects are much less likely to contradict each and Star Trek has a greater chance of staying more nearly internally consistent. And
Right.
It was my very real fear that if we didn't do this, that it really was going to fall apart, because there was so much new Star Trek coming out.
Right.
And that's why we did the chronology.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful piece, and it keeps everything in sync, and I can see from a production standpoint, though, why that something like that would be necessary, and almost be something that the writers would have to adhere to, because then it's following the Bible of the show, so to speak.
Well, you always want to allow a little bit of wiggle room in case someone needs something.
Mm-hmm.
Someone you need to tweak something to support
Sure.
a storyline. But Gene is always was, from the very beginning, wanting within reasonable limits to keep stuff reasonably consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Jumping ahead and jumping sideways, we're presently working on a series called For All Mankind, which is an alternate history.
Yeah.
And we are not the historians of that project, but one of the executive producers, Bradley Thompson, who worked on Star Trek, who worked on Galactica, had developed this amazing spreadsheet showing all of the NASA missions in the timeline. Some of them are real, and a lot of them are alternate versions. So, like in Mission Control, on the above the big screens, they have these status boards telling you what spacecraft are up there, or whatever, and Bradley figured all that stuff out, so it was great. I could say, okay, well, SDS whatever is up there, and at this point, because at this point in the story, we're in this year, in this month.
So it's literally a timeline that he put together just to make sure that everything was being adhered to. Then,
yeah, reasonably so, and you don't get it quite perfect, but
sure,
but it's great to have that that backbone.
Absolutely, yeah, because then it's something that you can refer to.
Mm-hmm. And not just us. if in a scene you have astronauts walking just in the background of the Johnson Space Center, what month does this episode take place in? Well, what astronauts would be here, and what
Right.
would their mission patches be, and they can figure that out.
That's kind of
Or
cool.
yeah, or there's in the third season in the Johnson Space Center's director's office is a status board of upcoming flights, and again I can say, oh, they're in this month of this year, so these are the flights that should be on the pad. This is the flight that should have returned, and I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it keeps consistency, and it's a way of actually tracking and knowing where you're, what time frame you're at. Bob Mack commented. He said, "Roy, can you please repeat what product contains the clips Mike is referring to?" That was the Roddenberry Vault. So
the Roddenberry Vault, published by CBS One Entertainment. You can still get copies on Amazon, and I'm sure elsewhere. Again, once it is sold out, they ain't producing more. So, and I'm sure you'll be able to get it off the collector's market, but at that point, it's going to cost you more.
Yeah. So get it while you can, while it's available. And again, it's coming up on 7 years that was released. Tracy commented. Henry says, "Thanks to Mike and Denise for signing his copy of the chronology."
Oh, you're welcome, Henry. You're welcome, Tracy.
And Arthur commented, "Can Mike talk about the current work on the Roddenberry archive? Just what are the objectives of this amazing work?"
The Roddenberry Archive is a project started quite a few years ago by Rod Roddenberry and his childhood friend, Jules Urbach. Jules Urbach is this amazing technologist. He really is a genius. He's the CEO of a cloud computing company called Otoy. And it's a multifaceted project. They're scanning documents. And but one of the most interesting aspects of it is they're building CG replicas of some of the starships and other vehicles from Roddenberry's work, and then the follow-on works. So there are these museum quality replicas of the original series Enterprise, its bridge, a lot of the interiors actually, and quite a number of ships called Enterprise. If you go on YouTube and look up Roddenberry Archive, we did a piece. I'm sorry, it was either called Enterprise Evolution or Starship Evolution, narrated by John Delancey, and it takes you through the history of briefly through the history of all the ships called all the starships called Enterprise. We're also producing a number of short documentaries to document aspects of the production. We interviewed a gentleman named Bob Butler, who was the production designer, the director of the very first Star Trek episode, The Cage. And he's, at the time we interviewed him, he was 92, and we were shocked and delighted at how much he remembered. That's from awesome. That shoot, which was late 1964.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. We just released a piece on Star Trek: The Next Generation to coincides with the conclusion of Star Trek Picard, because we figured that was a moment to celebrate Star Trek: The Next Generation. And we interviewed Dave Blass, production designer on Picard. We interviewed Herman Zimmerman, the original production designer on Next Generation. We talked to David Gerald, who was on staff at the beginning of that show. Andy Probert, the illustrator who conceived the basic concept of the D and its bridge. So it was. Who else did we talk to? We talked to James Conway, one of the directors, David Livingston, a producer, director / production manager. anyway, the goal of the Roddenberry Archive is to document and preserve the work of Star Trek's creator. We're releasing stuff because we think there's a great deal of interest, but the real audience isn't you and it isn't me. It's because right now, a lot of the stuff you actually can find. But come back 10 years from now, come back 20 years from now, come back 50 years from now, and ask, how did they make Star Trek? What did the Enterprise look like? And when we recreate an Enterprise, we do two versions. We do the version that you think you saw on screen, what we call the in-universe version. But we also do the version as it existed as a set, as it existed as a model. So there was only one side to this model. The other side wasn't painted. Or they only built this much quarter, then it stopped. And you might think those are flaws, and I suppose they are, but they're an important part of the story. How did they make Star Trek? Why did they make certain production decisions? It's an important part of the story, and we're trying to preserve that.
That's because into your point, the folks here today, and what's scary is, again, more and more time is going by, and what's going to happen is certain things are going to be forgotten, and sadly a lot of the folks that were involved with the production, especially the original series, I mean, I didn't even realize that Robert Butler was still alive. So I mean, that's amazing in itself. And the fact
he's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it would be incredible just to hear him talk about that and everything. And what will be remembered 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So that the fact that that's being preserved and is being respected is huge. And that's wonderful that you and Denise are a part of this project with the other folks, Rod Roddenberry and his, as you said, his friend,
Jules Urbach, Roger Lay Jr. is our filmmaker. Darren Doctorman is our production designer.
Wow.
And so he's there not only to help ensure accuracy, but also just building these things is a complicated endeavor.
Sure.
And so he supervises a team of amazing CG artists. And if you see the videos, you go, that's what it looked like.
Warren just commented, and I have actually seen this too, Warren. He said, I saw some photos of the project. They hired an actress who was a spitting image of Yeoman Colt from The Cage. And that was, I believe her name was Laurel Goodwin. And she just passed away not too long ago, too, sadly. I think she was the last.
That was very unfortunate. We were just getting ready to do that documentary piece on The Cage, the one that included Bob Butler. And we had reached out to Laurel Goodwin, and we had hoped to interview, and then she passed away. We did interview Sandy Gimple, who was one of the Telosians, not the lead Telosian, but she was a Telosian, and she was a salt vampire. And we interviewed Chris Hunter, who was Jeffrey Hunter's son. So that was kind of fun, him talking about his father.
Yeah, I know he's been to the Star Trek original series set tour a couple of times. I've actually had the opportunity to meet him, and just hearing him talk about his dad and everything, and the legacy and everything in regards to Jeffrey Hunter. It's a shame that his life ended at such a young age too, with everything that had happened with him. But what a staple, though. I mean, what a presence, he left behind with not only The Cage, but of course with the Menageries, Part 1 and Part 2. I mean, just amazing. But I'm going to start to wind down. I'm just going to ask folks if you have any last minute questions that you would like to ask.
Because I actually will need to run away very shortly.
But I just wanted before we do that, I just want to thank everybody for being out there. And I'm just going to put the slide up one more time, just to remind everybody that both you and Denise and Dave and Liz, as well as William Shatner, will be at the Star Trek Original Series set tour.
Some guy named Bill.
Some guy named Bill. On July 7th, 8th, and 9th. And again, you can go to www.startrektour.com for information regards to that. Just to let everybody know too, Ross and I will be back on Friday, and we are going to be discussing. We were supposed to do it this Friday, but things got changed because I was actually having connectivity issues. And we're going to be talking about Indiana Jones. And ironically enough, it coincides with the release of the new Indiana Jones movie, The Dial of Destiny, which is on June 30th. We will be broadcasting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So just everybody to tune in at that time.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah. So looking forward to it. Mike, I'm going to let you go because I know you got to get going. I want to say thank you so much for being a part of the show and coming on. It was a pleasure to see you, and my best and our best to Denise. And I hope to see you, if everything works out, at least get up there at least maybe one day in the next couple of weeks, just to see you up there in Ticonderoga, New York.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. And again, I'm sorry, but I got to run.
Yep. Take care, Mike.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, folks, I'm going to sign off. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. Hope everybody's doing well, and enjoy the rest of your week. And as we like to always say, live long and prosper. Take care. Bye-bye.